Hello there, beautiful people. Welcome into Sports Burst. Kevin Egan, delighted to be alongside Andres Cordero. Thanks for joining us for the next 15 minutes or so. We've got a lot to get to, Dre, including the action in Tampa last night. The US falling to Colombia 4-2.
Can we just spend 15 minutes on this, to be honest?
Okay.
4-2, it wasn't even that close. Honestly, the US should have been down probably 2-3-0 at the half.
Interesting. All right, we'll get to that. And Kylian Mbappé comes off the bench to absolutely rescue France. There were 2 goals down. The 19-year-old continues to produce.
I don't refer to him as 19. He's ageless at this moment. He's been doing it for a good 2-3 years now as a teenager. He is the real deal in the most real sense of the word.
And who am I?
Usain Bolt.
Yeah, Usain Bolt. Yeah, like Mbappé, bagging a few goals as well. It's all to come here on Sports Burst. Yes, welcome in. Tampa was the venue last night. The red, white and blue, although there wasn't much red, white and blue in the stands, apart from the upper deck that was red and that was quite empty. Colombia bringing many of the fans to watch this game, and they got their money's worth indeed. James Rodriguez pulling off a masterpiece of a goal. Welcome into Sports Burst. Delighted you've joined us. I'm telling you, Dre, that was something special. Right. James, when James is on, he's incredible. And I think whenever I watch Colombia play, I feel like the nation always puts him in a position to succeed rather than club level.
If you build your team around James Rodriguez, James is going to perform. Now, teams like Real Madrid, Bayern Munich at times have been reluctant to do that because they don't really have to. Unless your name is Cristiano Ronaldo, Lionel Messi, they don't necessarily need to build around you. But when you're Colombia, I think we saw sort of at the 2014 World Cup, right before the tournament starts, they lose Falcao. The team is basically now built around James, and it was beautiful to watch. I thought that was the most lovely brand of football we saw during the entire 2014 World Cup. This was as good as they've looked since then for me, and it was exactly the same thing. It was in James' feet.
Interesting stuff. For the US, look, there was some bright sparks. Kylian Acosta's goal, the way he adjusted to the flick on, I thought was impressive. Right. The pass from Tim Weah was perfectly weighted into the path of Bobby Wood, who scored brilliantly.
Gorgeous.
It was a beautiful pass. Great breakaway, great tackle in midfield from Julian Green. But the overall performance concerns you.
Okay, before we get into that, because I'm going to do a deep dive into negativity in a moment, I do want to point out that pass from Tim Weah is something I didn't think or I didn't know that he had in his game until I saw it. And it looks like that PSG, the couple of PSG starts he had at the start of the season are starting to rub off on him. The way he played that ball in perfectly, just nicely weighted, the right time, when normally he would rely on his speed to try and take his man on the counter. The fact that he had the presence of mind to make that pass and to execute it the way he did was absolutely gorgeous. That aside, I'm a U.S. soccer fan. I have been the entire time I've been in this country. I'm a U.S. citizen. I want U.S. soccer to succeed. I want Major League Soccer to succeed. But for a long time now, watching the U.S. men's national team has felt like a chore. I find myself watching the game out of sheer obligation to be informed, not out of any enjoyment, but just the obligation to stay up to date and informed. I'm not rooting for the team necessarily. I'm looking for a direction. If we're saying that the U.S. is headed in the wrong direction or the U.S. is headed in the right direction, I would first like to identify an observable direction before I know whether we're headed in the right direction or not. I watched that game yesterday, and save for a handful of minutes between, say, the 49th and the 54th, when for a moment Colombia were down a man as Cordero was getting treated on the sideline, the U.S. scored 2 quick goals. The rest of that game was a chore to suffer through as opposed to a footballing game to enjoy. And I don't know what the solution is, because I think there are systemic, fundamental problems in American soccer.
Have you ever felt, as a fan of the US, that there was a direction? Did you ever sit back, even maybe through Bob Bradley's time, and say, this is looking good right now? At least we're playing to our strengths.
I'll go back around 2002, the lead up to 2006, even though the tournament itself was a bit of a disaster. But it's been well over a decade since I have genuinely and consistently enjoyed watching the US national team. There's just so little joy in their football. And sure, you can take a moment from Kylian Acosta or a moment from Tim Weah, 2 players who are very promising, very good. But overall, it just feels like a burden to watch this team play, and it's utterly joyless. So
if we take little moments from the game, those are moments that a player will produce by themselves. So that's not Timothy Weah receiving any instruction. That's him using his instincts in order to play that ball through. But you're right, going forward, the manager is still not there. Here we are, over a year on from the disaster in Trinidad, and there's still no coach in place. Yes, Ernie Stewart's in place. Yes, there's a new president in place. There's new players that have been blooded through. We highlighted them on the extra during the week. There is some players that we should be excited about. Right. But there needs to be, and this is how I feel about international football, Dre. I feel you hire a coach with a set system that has a clear identity of how they want to play, and you pick the players that suit that system, not necessarily the best collection of players.
Sure.
And I think someone like a Greg Berhalter, for me, would be a good choice, even though many people out there will say that that's a lack of ambition when it comes to Greg Berhalter. From what I've seen enough to know that I think he knows enough about the system, and I think he could do a great job.
Here's why I think Colombia was such a good measuring stick for U.S. soccer at this stage, after having missed out on the World Cup. Because Colombia also haven't named a coach. Colombia are still working on their interim coach, Arturo Reyes. They haven't named a permanent replacement for Jose Pekerman. You might say, well, it's a continuation of what they were doing before, and that worked out pretty well. Sure, but there is a footballing culture. There is an identity to the nation. They play a particular brand that usually is more entertaining, is more pass-based. When Colombia are playing at their best, it's a party. I mean, they're dancing after goals. There's beautiful connectivity, short passing. And so that stuff sort of goes beyond just who the manager is at a given moment. Sure, you might have somebody who comes in and tweaks a few things, but the U.S. in the absence of a coach just looked like absolute chaos for the most part. And so you can't say, well, it's because we don't have a coach. It's because, you know, this isn't really the start of the process toward 2022, because Colombia are dealing with the exact same thing and looked different class. I mean, it only took 17 seconds watching that match to realize that these two teams are barely playing the same sport. The level of Colombia individually, the level of control, the level of composure, the way they circulate possession, the way they create chances, compared to the USA, which really just looks like they're making it up as they go along.
We know all this about the US. We know that you look at the first touch, for example, of Colombia last night, and that's very evident for us all to see. Hopefully, going forward, a coach needs to be hired as soon as possible, right? An implementation of a certain style as soon as possible. There can be no delay on that. And this is where I'll be incredibly disappointed if a Berhalter does get hired. What's taken so long? Right. Are you telling me that Greg Berhalter's not going to walk away from a Columbus Crew that Anthony Precourt wants to lift up and throw to Austin, Texas? Leave that job. Right. Go and take the US job if that's the case. There shouldn't be a delay to this.
Here's what's taking so long. There isn't really any accountability at the top of US soccer. There isn't. If there were accountability, there would have been major changes in the US Soccer Federation. It wouldn't just been the deputy stepping up and taking over. If there was some accountability, there would have been pressure to name a coach already. There would be pressure to find a direction. Honestly, I'm at a loss for. We are in footballing purgatory.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we're stuck in this weird limbo and going absolutely nowhere.
We are, absolutely. I couldn't agree with that more. We have some some comments coming through here. Andreas says, why is Pulisic not being called up to the national team? He is. He pulled out through injury yet again. Christian Pulisic, as far as I'm aware, has only played in one single game since that loss against Trinidad and Tobago. And he's playing a lot for Borussia Dortmund right now. So for him, it would nearly seem, and maybe I'm being a bit harsh here from afar, that it's just hassle to have to come across and play in some of these friendly games, especially when there is no coach.
That aside, it's not like we're just a Christian Pulisic away from all of a sudden the US being world beaters and being brilliant. He was involved in the World Cup qualifiers and we missed out.
I saw a lot of comments coming through last night over on Twitter saying things like, if you're not really excited about this generation of US players coming through, there's something wrong. You can't be pessimistic. Yet I look at these and I think there's one player, and that is Pulisic, who's playing, you could argue, in a top 20 team in the world. And he wasn't playing a whole... He was rested many times last year, started from the bench, but this year he is featuring. Yeah. But there's no one else, Ray. There's no one else. I feel like if we're celebrating Weston McKennie playing for Schalke, shame on us to call ourselves a soccer nation.
When things aren't going very well for a club manager, and you know that the team's either going to be relegated or it's just going to be an absolute disaster of a season, they're not going to meet their goals, what do? They start playing the young kids. They start bringing out the academy kids. The conveyor belt of youth comes out and makes everybody excited. Look, it's sort of the unknown. Oh, there's real potential in these young kids. Sure, there's potential in U.S. soccer, but that potential needs sort of the right climate in order to grow. And I think right now the optimism around U.S. soccer is exclusively faith-based. It's a matter of faith. You think, oh, we have exciting young players going on, so it'll all work itself out. And I just don't see it.
Comment coming through here from Eliana Hamas, who says Cordero was the best player in my opinion. Agreeing with you on that too. For a short guy too, from Matt Miazga, huh? Give him a bit of a run around.
Cordero came on and his very first intervention led to a goal. Guess which side? The left side of USA's defense, where Anthony Robinson was torched all night. Brooks wasn't particularly better. Seth actually was sort of caught out of position a couple of times. It became evident after 3 minutes that Colombia were going to abuse the left side of USA's defense, and they did it for the remaining 90 minutes. After 3 minutes, it was James who got away from someone, and Arias who gets away. Brooks and Robinson basically slam into each other, and Falcao probably should have put away his volley. It would have been 1-0 after 3 minutes. I'm done talking about this.
No, and the last comment here from Nicholas here on this game says, never should have fired Klinsmann. They need a European coach to change how they view and play the game. I disagree with that, to be honest with you. We'll move on to France. taking on Iceland. Now, the French trailed by 2-0. This was a game where they marched around the World Cup trophy. Beforehand, they trailed, but they brought on a 19-year-old teenager. I'm not sure if you've heard of him, a fellow by the name of Kylian Mbappé, who came on, Dre, and scored he pressured an own goal, and then he scores his 10th international goal already. Now, I was looking at some of the numbers earlier on today. Guess how many goals Kylian Mbappé, have a guess at this, he's 19, has scored at club level.
At club level?
First team club level for a 19-year-old.
40.
58. Oh, he scored 58 goals at club level. He's played for Monaco and PSG. This guy is outstanding. And the French play with this kind of jovial spirit, don't they? There's something fun about watching France play.
And it's not just, not a lot of fun yesterday where they needed the own goal in the 86th minute and the penalty to tie it in the 90th minute. With a very strong French side, by the way. Varane and Kimpembe, the starting centre backs, and Nzonzi and Pogba with a double pivot. Thauvin, Griezmann, and Dembele as the attacking midfielders behind Giroud. That's a strong French team against Iceland. And they needed, again, that own goal in the 86th and the Mbappe penalty off the bench in the 90th minute to get a draw against Iceland. So it wasn't the best performance, but we've been watching Kylian Mbappe now since his Monaco days. And from the moment that he arrived on the scene, when he was asking for the ball in Champions League games, sort of seeming to not just be a cog in the machine, but be the central figure. Even when Neymar's there, he's asking for the ball. Falcao was there with him at Monaco. He's asking for the ball. I love his attitude more than anything. And what we've seen ever since is that his attitude is just as good off the bench, right? When you see him donating $500,000 to a children's charity, saying, it's not going to change my life, but it may change theirs. I've got a massive man crush on Kylian Mbappe.
It makes two of us.
And there's so many young players who, 19, 20 years old, they break out and you say, well, that kid can be a superstar, cannot. I can't recall the last time I was this certain that a player was going to be the future as I am with Mbappe. Maybe it was Lionel Messi.
Do you know what he has that not all strikers have? When you really look at an Alvaro Morata, for example, even a Gabby Jesus, when I watch him lately, when his confidence is down, the guy looks a completely different player altogether. Cristiano Ronaldo has the same quality that Kylian Mbappe has too, where, you miss again, you miss again. Do you know what? You get up, you go again. Robbie Keane for the Irish national team scored 56 international goals. Always had that same trait. And it's very hard to find, but when you have that short memory and you're a bit of a goldfish on the pitch, it can really benefit you.
I think the difference between him and, say, like a Gabriel Jesus, for example, who was a fabulous player, obviously, and will probably start for Brazil later today on beIN Sports against Saudi Arabia.
Nice plug.
Which you should watch. I'm just saying.
And they play Argentina next Tuesday on beIN Sports.
Also on Tuesday. What he has is he's already got the production. At 19 years old, you're not saying, well, as soon as the goals start coming, as soon as the conversion rate starts coming, he's not there to hold up the ball for others. He's not there to create chances for anybody else. Aside from all of the things he does off the ball, aside from all of the chances he creates for other players, the production is there. You mentioned the 58 goals already as a 19-year-old at the professional level.
Hey, where's Mbappe's best position, by the way, for you? I know it depends on who he's playing with.
Right.
But is it the out-and-out striker and let him stretch his legs, or is it on the flank in 4-3-3 maybe?
Ideally, I'd like to have him play off of a center forward where he can actually come off of either the left or the right. I don't care which side. Right now with Neymar, he's going to come off the right because Neymar prefers the left-hand side, but I think he'd be equally as good. In fact, at Monaco, he tended to cheat more toward the left-hand side. I'd rather see him coming off the edge than just as the go-to center forward because there's just more attention on you when you're that front man. I'd rather see somebody else take up that.
Monaco going through a bad time right now. Out goes Leonardo Jardim. Josue,
how do you feel about that, by the way? About Jardim being fired?
I feel that...
Producer hates me because it's not in the rundown.
This is not in the rundown at all. It's a quick thought on Jardim. He sold as much as, $1 billion worth of players from the team that reached the Champions League semi-final a couple of years ago. Outstanding coach. May have lost the dressing room a little bit. There's still Jemerson Glick from that semi-final team. You see Yuri Tielemans, you see Falcao. Yep. That should be a good enough team to not be 4 points adrift from safety in the relegation zone. So if you're the Monaco leadership, you look at it and you say he's got to go. But at the same time, my word, you've profited majorly from this coach.
So I agree with you on the fact that maybe it feels like they should owe him more, but I think the real, if you're the leadership at Monaco, you say, I have to get out of this mess. Forget loyalties, forget what he's already done. Exactly, you have to avoid relegation. And so I thought Leonardo Jardim might have been the best manager in Ligue 1, but this season, it's a justified firing.
There's a bit of a Mauricio Pochettino about him in the sense that maybe he should have jumped when he had an opportunity to do so during the summer. Pochettino, remember, didn't go to Real Madrid, if we're to believe reports. Josue says, I love to see Mbappe with Real Madrid. Patrick Meehan says, Mbappe is the greatest 19-year-old to ever exist. I think the stats would actually back that up, too.
Pele might have
something to say about that. Yeah, fair enough. Nicholas never should have fired Klinsmann. We're going back to some of the previous comments.
Gotcha.
So, good stuff. Hey, you know who scored a brace as well as Kylian Mbappé? Not you, Dre. But you did in five-a-side. You did, but yeah. Usain Bolt, unbelievable. Just to see him performing the way he's doing right now, it's fun. Yeah. It's something that's enjoyable. There's a lot of people that hate. I know Gabrielle Amato, regular host here of Sports Burst, cannot stand the hype this is getting. Right. She's just spoiling all the fun altogether. Yeah. But the first goal that he scored for the
finish.
The Central Coast Mariners. Yeah. What a run too.
It was his first start for the club. He's been there with, since August, like basically training with them, and then all of a sudden he's one of their players. The first goal was brilliant. The second goal was a tap in. I kind of agree with Gabby Amato in this. It's a fun sideshow. It's the last thing we're going to close on today, but it's irrelevant and no one should care. Okay, let's forget about Usain Bolt for a second. If you could pick a major sports star and put them into a different sport, this was not in the plan. Let's just throw this out there. Do you know who I think? I think Neymar would be excellent at basketball. At basketball? Seen him play enough. He's got that little shimmy and a shake. Yeah. As a point guard, I reckon he could be top class. I think Bobo Vieri would have been an excellent tennis player.
Yeah?
Have you ever seen him play tennis? I think he would have been a terrific tennis pro.
What would Messi be good at?
Messi's good at what he's doing. He should probably stick to that. He's 5'7".
Don't want Messi doing anything else.
Wet, yeah.
All right, folks, going to wrap it up. Thanks so much for all the comments coming through on Facebook here. It's always a pleasure to join you on Sports Burst. I'll be back with the extra alongside Thomas Rongan a little bit later on 7 p.m. Eastern time, followed by the Locker Room too, which always promises to be a good show. Are you on that show later on today? Beautiful. Looking forward to that. All right, guys, thanks so much. For Dre, for me, Kev, take care. Thanks for joining us.